What's going on, everybody? It's yours truly, Coach Mike Dub, and I'm here with another edition of Lockdown Defense Sports Studio. Of course, we're here doing our off-season blitz, where we're going over all the different teams, division by division, doing previews, off-season grades, and also predictions for the season. So, here today, I'm fortunate enough to get to go over the Detroit Lions, one of the fan favorites, one of the NFL's success stories in the past few years. Everybody loves Dan Campbell. Everybody loves, Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, everything that's going on with Detroit. They love a good success story. They love a good underdog story. Last year, they had a great year. We're going to see how well they progress this year. Another year under the Dan Campbell regime. Now they're no longer the laughable Lions. Everybody, is expecting them to do great things. They had the best record in the NFC last year, home field advantage, Ford Field was rocking. How do they build on that this year? And I'm just going to give a little precursor and say it may not be what you expect. So a lot of people are expecting big things from the Lions. Like I said, they're one of the fan favorites. Everybody loves Dan Campbell. Everybody loves the success story. Detroit has been down for so long. It's good to finally see them competing for divisional titles and all those things like that. But now it's another year under the books. They ended off disappointed, had a disappointing ending to their season last year. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a hangover this year. So let's jump right into it and take a look at some of their offseason moves. What did they do, right? They started out by signing DJ Reed, came over from the Jets, defensive back, pretty solid. Also, they doubled down on their defensive backs by bringing in Avonte Maddox, Rock Ya-Sin. So a lot of veterans that have played in the league, bounced around from team to team, just adding some depth to that secondary. One thing that I think really played a part in them having a disappointing season, having a disappointing end to the season last year was the injuries. Obviously, they made a lot of noise throughout the regular season. They did some good things, but towards the back end, going into the playoffs, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they faced a lot of injuries, a lot of injuries. So you can see here they're really trying to be intentional about adding to their depth. They got some solid young guys, a solid young core on defense, specifically in that secondary. Brian Branch, one of the young, better safeties, he's coming back. Of course, their defensive back that they took last year in the draft as well, he's coming back. You know, uh, so they got some talent back there. But once again, I think their main focus in the offseason was definitely signing some DBs, signing some edge rushers, specifically getting to the quarterback and protecting that secondary and really providing some depth for them just in case they run into that injury bug again. Of course, as a Commander fan, we were the benefactor of a lot of those injuries that they ended up having. We took advantage of them and were able to come out with a win in Ford Field. And I think that same thing can happen to them again if they're not careful. So I think they're very intentional about adding depth. I mentioned before, especially on that defensive line. We know Aiden Hutchinson went down. They had a few other guys went down, brought in some guys like Zadarius Smith halfway through the year last year. So he won't be returning, but he was another depth piece that they brought in, throughout the year. So this year they tried to address that in the offseason. They tried to re-sign a lot of guys that they had, but really the key to their defense is going to be staying healthy. And really that's really what they wanted to address with the depth issues. And like I said, specifically at defensive back and specifically at edge rush, when they're healthy, they're good. When they're healthy, they are good. They fly around to the ball. Aiden Hutchinson, of course, one of the better young edge rushers in the league. So, hopefully they're able to bounce back and hopefully they're able to get that depth going. But you can see they really didn't need to swing for the fences with free agency. They pretty much have everything that they need in place. They didn't really have any major needs that left. So pretty much all their major producers, I could say, from last year are going to be returning. So that's a good thing for them. That core is there. That culture is still there. So that's working in their benefit for them. So pretty solid free agency take. They didn't lose too much, brought back a lot of guys. They're trying to run it back clearly and pretty much provide more depth. Then we look into their draft. Draft, once again, they addressed defense first and foremost. That defensive line you can clearly see was a priority for their offseason. This time they went interior with the defensive lineman for Ohio State, pairing him up with another young defensive line superstar, like I mentioned before, and Aiden Hutchinson. Hopefully he can provide some type of staunch in the interior. Of course, they have DJ Reader there as well. So trying to really provide that staunch defensive line to help stop the run and also get after the quarterback. Then on the offensive side of the ball, I loved how they addressed the interior offensive line with two of their next three picks, Tate Rutledge and Miles Frazier, two SEC guys, run heavy guys, also did a great job protecting their quarterback. So, of course, if you want to be a team that's going to go far in this league, you're going to have a good defensive line, good offensive line that starts in the trenches. So, I love the fact that they addressed that. Depth is the key. Remember that word, depth, 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 especially for a team like the Lions who already brought back their core of the team that won the division last year. They didn't really need a lot of guys that were going to come in and change the trajectory of the team. Like they just need guys that are going to come in, provide depth, and be able to build off of what they already have. And I think they did a pretty good job at addressing that with their trenches. Edge rusher, of course, they went after that. So clearly going with the same thing as the free agency with your secondary, your D line being the main focus, specifically edge rusher, and of course, like I mentioned, corner safety, different things like that. So they addressed it multiple times. They also brought in a nice receiver. I would say this personnel wise is not going to be my issue with the Lions this year, or not going to be my question about the Lions. I think they have, if not the same guys, a better roster when you talk about personnel wise than they did last year. They don't have anybody that's past their prime or anybody that their clock is ticking on them. They're a young team. They're just entering in their prime. If you're being honest, maybe Jared Goff is playing the best football that he's probably going to play. Their young running backs, they're playing good. Young wide receivers, they're just now entering in their prime. I think we're going to see career years possibly from them. So I think they're in a good space from a roster perspective. Like I said, they don't have many holes. They didn't come into this offseason with many holes to fill. So that's a good thing. The question is going to be on the coaching. And the reason for that is because if you've been paying attention, if you've been watching our videos as well, and if you've just been tuned in the offseason, you know that the major changes for this team did not come in the locker room, but they came more so in the front office or from the coaching boxes. Losing both coordinators, both are now head coaches in the NFL. Both coordinators had a huge impact on this team and how they played on defense. Kelvin Shepard will be stepping up. He's a former linebacker coach for the team, so he's in house. I don't think that there's going to be much of a shift as far as play goes on the defensive side of the ball because you have Kelvin Shepard, who was a part of that unit last year, and he's just elevating. He's already been a part of that culture. I think the guys are going to play for him. He's going to know how to communicate to the guys. He's going to be able to be a good, consistent touch point for that defense to not lose a beat. Once again, the biggest thing on defense is for them just staying healthy. They didn't lose a lot. They actually added some pieces, nice corner, some edge rushers, brought them back. So I think the defense will be fine, even though Aaron Glenn is a big loss from a culture perspective and from a player's perspective of how he communicated with the guys and how they responded to him. So you're never going to get better when, a guy like Aaron Glenn is not in your building anymore. But I think that they set themselves up for success by elevating somebody who was already in the building, already part of that culture, and just having him, take that next step into the defensive coordinator role. So I like the move from Kelvin Shepard. Offensively, this is where I think is going to be a little bit of a learning curve. John Morton came over from the Broncos, I believe. So it's a little different now. So you have a guy that's coming from outside the building. You have a guy that's coming in. Their former their former offense coordinator is now a head coach in their division or in their conference, I should say, with the New Orleans Saints. So, needless to say, you can probably guess that everything's going to be brand new, from terminology to schemes to formations, all kinds of things like that. So, I'm pretty sure they spent a lot of their offseason learning a new offense. There's always going to be learning curves with that. That's where the question is going to come in, is how well they're going to be able to gel offensively. Is that chemistry going to be able to kick in? They had amazing play calling last year. If you watch the Lions play, great balance between run, pass. You never knew what was coming with them. And the question is, are they going to be able to keep that creativity up? Are they going to be able to spread the ball around and make sure that their receivers, are satisfied, making sure that their running backs are getting the touches they have? They have a lot of moving pieces on that offense, and it's going to be interesting to see if John Morton is able to get the keys to that car without crashing it. So that's my question. It's not so much on the defense. It's going to be on the offensive side of the ball because of the coaching change. And now we're going to take a look at their schedule, right? Touching on that, I think that this is a team. Luckily, they have a bye week, pretty in the middle of the season. I would say not too early, not too late. And I think that they're going to struggle before they get to their bye week because of the adjustment and because of the chemistry issues that they may be trying to figure out on the offensive side of the ball. So, one thing that plays in their favor, they don't have too many staunch defensive teams in these first 7 games before the bye week. Of course, your divisional opponents are going to be tough with the Packers, the Bears opening up. The Ravens, of course, a tough divisional opponent or a tough defense, I should say. Bucks also, you never know what they get from them, but they have a defensive minded coach, so that could be a struggle for them as well. But I could see this team being a sub 500 team in the first 7 weeks before the bye week. I think after the bye week, they're able to reassess what went well, what didn't go well for them, and really set into their offense what's working for them, what's not working for them. And then they might see them start to get some type of continuity and playing better on the back half of the season. Uh, like I said, they don't have a super tough schedule, but they have some games that could easily creep up on them. They may have one of the toughest divisions in football because a lot of those teams, 3 playoff teams last year, with the Bears knocking on the door, you just never know what they expect from that. So I can see this being around a 9 win, maybe 10 win team this year. Like I said, roster wise is not the issue, but it's more so going to be how they respond to their coaches. And this could go either way. They may end up loving their offense coordinator. They may end up picking up right where they left off, and it may be the greatest hire since whenever. And if that's the case, then I'll be the first to say that I was wrong. But I'm going to be on record and saying that I had some doubts about the transition early on. Not saying that it's not going to work overall, but I think early on, there's going to be a little bit of a transition phase that's going to maybe trip them up and possibly have them, like I said, looking at my prediction being a 9 win, 10 win team with them struggling out the gate, but perhaps turning it around towards the end. So you heard my prediction. I think that this could be a wild card team. I don't see them winning the division this year. I think that we're going to see a team like the Vikings, maybe even the Packers, shake things up. Of course, a lot of people have their eyes on the Bears and how that's going to happen with the Lions' former offensive coordinator there. So that's going to be another team to watch. But for many reasons, I don't think that they will repeat as division winners this year. I think that they will be in the running for a wild card. They're a team that could possibly even win a game, depending on what that matchup is in the playoffs, and be some road warriors. But I'm looking at a 9 win, 10 win wild card team as my prediction. And off-season grades, I would give them about a solid B for the off-season grade. They didn't really need too much. They addressed what they needed to address, added to their depth. As I mentioned before, it's not much that they could have done differently in the offseason. They couldn't control their coordinators leaving and becoming head coaches. That's a good thing. That's what you want. But honestly, I think that that's their biggest loss and their biggest transition this year is not going to be roster wise, but it's going to be when it comes down to those coordinators. So let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you a Lions fan? Are you looking to the Lions to repeat, be another 14-win season, 13-win season? Or do you agree with me and say that this may be a step back for them and they may have to go back to the drawing board and kind of reshuffle some things around? Here are our socials. Let us know in the comments. Follow us. Tune in to more insider videos as we get closer to the season. And this is yours truly, Coach Mike Dub.